So hello, everyone. Welcome to our first orientation webinar. It's our orientation kickoff. I'm Angela Francis. I'm the Assistant Dean of General Education and First Year Experience. But even more important than that, right now, I am your facilitator for orientation. So I am very happy to get to meet you in the site and through your questions and your comments on the chat here. Just want to go through a bit of information. First, I want to make sure you're aware of some other webinars that are coming. So first up is that Brightspace Essentials, Mastering Your Learning Platform. That's coming this Wednesday because Brightspace is new to all of us at CUNY, unless you've got outside of CUNY experience. Next, we've got a webinar on credit for prior learning. So there's a bit of information about this in orientation. You'll learn a bit about it during the webinar, but the real experts will be there on Thursday to give you more information and answer any questions you have. We also then will have an orientation webinar on writing like a pro in terms of essays, academic integrity, and AI. Before I was in this role, I was indeed a college writing professor. So I will be there to provide any help and guidance that might be useful. And then we will have our final orientation webinar focused on resources that will help you thrive both inside and outside of the classroom while you are here at CUNY SPS. So all of these webinars are from 6 to 7 p.m. And you can find the registration links within that Start Here area of orientation. I also just want to give some general ground rules. There are more than 300 of you here, which is thrilling. But it does mean that if you ask your questions for me in the chat, there's a good risk I'm going to miss them. So instead, please use the QA feature to type in a question about the content of this orientation. You can use the chat if you have a technical problem. So for example, you stop being able to hear me or see my screen. And we will also be doing some polling just in a moment via a pop-up. So when you see that, go ahead and give us your feedback. So for the agenda, we'll do that polling activity in a minute. We'll talk about online learning and orientation. I'll give you a bit of an introduction, to Mindset GPS. We'll do that spotlight on credit for prior learning, as well as another on zero textbook cost courses. And then I'll give a tour of orientation and offer a couple of tips before we do a QA session. So, Molly, I am 100% going to rely on you here to throw up that poll, please. We have this question on the screen for you, and we really want to know what makes you feel nervous, if anything, about starting your degree program, and also what makes you feel excited about starting your degree program. So we're going to give you some time just to put in some short answer feedback on that, because we will be reviewing that. And in particular, something's making you feel nervous, we want to know about it in orientation, but we also want to know about it in terms of your degree program. So now's a good time to let us know. And I see that those questions or those answers are still popping up, so I'm going to give everyone a little bit more time. But I will just share back when I was starting my most recent degree program, I felt really nervous about it being at a different school. I was thinking about the things that had happened to me in my previous institution, where I had a couple of issues figuring out where to go for things, I was really worried that that was going to happen again. But what I was super excited about was I had found a degree program that really meshed with what I wanted to do for my career. And so I was really excited about that fresh start. So that was me. I'm going to give you guys another 15 seconds to put those answers in. All right, about 5 more. All right. Oh, I see them coming in. I don't want to stop it when more answers are coming in. So, all right, here's your real 5-second warning. Fantastic. So we're going to end that poll here. And what we can do is we'll review these and I'll be able to look into it and make sure we incorporate as much as possible over the next 2 weeks. So thank you all so much. So let's get started just talking about online learning, and particularly online learning at SPS, because I happen to think you've made a great move resuming your educations here, and I want you to know more about the strengths and resources available to you. So all of your courses online are designed and taught by CUNY faculty, and that's both CUNY faculty here at SPS, but sometimes we find an expert at another campus and we work with them. And so that means you're really getting key expertise in your courses here. They also are all going to be based on interactive and collaborative learning models. So hopefully you're starting to see that in orientation. But the idea is that this is not just a situation where you're sitting in front of a computer teaching yourself the materials. Nobody really enjoys doing that. So we've really built in opportunities for you to learn from your peers, from your faculty, and from the range of staff available here. Because these are predominantly asynchronous online courses, and what asynchronous means is that we are not all going to be online at the same time. If you're feeling a little bit nervous about your writing skills, these courses will automatically help you develop that in what we call low stakes areas. So whereas in a face-to-face classroom, if you're writing something, it's getting graded and there's pressure there, here that's not always going to be the case because you're writing just to communicate. And there are multiple types of resources to help you develop those skills too. So don't feel too badly if you're not feeling quite comfortable yet. All of our majors are also grounded in academic practice. So that means you might be here to become a nurse, or you might be here because you're in the HSA program, the business program, whatever the program is. We are balancing the things you'll need to get a career in that area with the sorts of educational well-roundedness that might actually also help you with your careers. And we are nationally ranked. We are almost always top 12 within the nation as an institution. So you are going to an award-winning school. But that's me talking up. Yes, I see the gasps. I am also, when I first learned that, was very pleased and surprised. So all of that is about why come here. But what about orientation? I'm very aware that you all are spending some of your summer with me, and I am very grateful. But I also want to make sure you know it is worth your time. So Orientation will, of course, teach you about the different resources at CUNY SPS. And that's particularly important because a lot of you may not ever come to campus. And so this is going to give you that sort of roadmap of where to go for what types of help. You'll also get your opportunity to ask questions, not just to me, but to faculty and staff within your programs, within areas you might be thinking about getting a major. There's representatives from student success and student life here as well. So if you're thinking about clubs, you'll have someone you can ask those questions to. These two we've put together because you'll get to connect with a peer mentor, which is key. All of our peer mentors in orientation are successful students or graduates of the programs that you are entering into. And so for as long as you are here in orientation, you'll have the opportunity to ask them their unfiltered opinion about what worked well for them, what didn't. You'll be able to send them emails, which means I won't be there to see what they say. So they really will be quite honest with you. And very key, you'll get to learn how to use Brightspace. We are all used to Blackboard if you've taken online courses at CUNY before. And I can tell you, as someone who has had to do the learning of a new learning management system recently, I really enjoy Brightspace, but there's a lot that's different, and I just need to learn how to do things a bit differently. So this is your opportunity to do that where there are no grades attached. And you'll get the chance to plan for the semester. So if you think about asynchronous learning, the benefit is you don't have to be in a classroom or in front of a Zoom call at any particular time. But the downside of all of that freedom means that you have to figure out where in your busy world you want to put your schoolwork. And so you're going to have the opportunity to test out your plan with us. And if it doesn't work for you, you can shift it in time for week 1 of the term. That's a lot of kind of feel good things, but I also want to talk to you about some numbers. So we've been running these numbers every semester since fall of 2014, and we found the same thing each semester. While I'm not going to say that if you do not complete orientation, you will not persist, I'm definitely not saying that. We have found that the students who complete orientation happen to persist from semester 1 to semester 2 at a higher rate. So in this particular term that we're showing here, there was a difference of about 8% in terms of continuing on to your second semester. And that's not it, because we see a similar difference in terms of GPA. So the GPAs of students who complete orientation on average are indeed higher. And that means this is a significant predictor of success in your first year. So I want to make sure you know that, and we also know it. So we definitely work to follow up with you throughout the semester and make sure we can keep that momentum going. Lastly, I just want to share one of my favorite comments I've ever gotten from someone who finished orientation, because I feel like this is quite real, and some of you may be feeling the same way. So this person said, at first, I was kind of annoyed that there were all of these assignments, but I absolutely loved it. I even decided to add a course that I had wanted to take, but was unsure if I should, because I was afraid I might be doing too much too soon. After this orientation, I feel confident that I can manage the course load and my time well, thanks to the time management activity. So just in case you're feeling a little annoyed, you're not alone. This student also felt a little alone, or annoyed rather, but hopefully in 2 weeks, you likewise will be saying something similar, where you're glad you actually spent the time with us in this. So I want to move on and just introduce a couple of topics to you, because while you'll see information about this in orientation, this is something I really want you guys to think carefully about. And I do see that someone has raised their hand. Because of the size of this webinar, I do ask that you put your question or comment in the Q&A, That way I can make sure I catch it along with any others. So this is about mindset GPS. And the G in GPS stands for growth mindset. You might have heard about this, and you might have heard about a version of this. For me, the way I think about it is that the way you think about learning can help you achieve your goals and navigate challenges and potential inequity. So sometimes people use growth mindset as a shorthand to say, well, if you just believe you can succeed, then you can succeed. And if you didn't succeed, it's because you didn't believe in yourself. That's not what we mean here. Instead, what we mean is, talking about myself, all of my degrees are in English. Math was hard. And if I had a growth mindset, I would say, okay, math is something I struggle with. I need to figure out what those resources are. What are those people and tools I can use to really help me move through this process with a little bit less difficulty? So it could be tutoring, it could be office hours, it could be group work, could be finding someone else who, if, for example, I had a particular learning disability, there might be someone else with that learning disability who has figured out a way to navigate the course. And if I have a disability of any sort, it could be reaching out to disability services and getting an accommodation. So it really is about saying, it's not that I'm destined to fail, it's that I need support. Let me figure out who to reach out to so I can get that support. Next up is purpose. That's the P in the GPS. And here it's, what's your reason? So it's not what's your parents or your children's or your spouse's reason for saying you should come back to school. It's not what your supervisor at work says is the reason you should come back to school and earn that degree. It's, why is it important to you? And so sometimes that is about your career. Sometimes you might have a child or a little sibling and you want to show them you can do it and that they can do it. Sometimes, in particular, I hear about this from disability studies. Sometimes you're trying to advocate for someone and you want more tools in your toolbox. All of those reasons are equally valid, but it's your reason that you really need to hold on to while you're working through this degree, because that's the thing that'll help keep you going. And lastly is social belonging, which is really just, you aren't the only one. So I know I hear from a lot of students who feel like they are a bit old to be returning to school, and they're shocked to hear that our average age of our incoming cohort is in their late 30s, which means that if you are in your 40s or 50s, you are still pretty close to that average. This is not a school where we have a bunch of 18-year-olds who are just starting out. You are not behind, but there might be other ways where you feel like you are the only one. So maybe you feel like you are the only one with a disability or who is from a certain part of the world. We've had students who are taking their courses and they're in Europe somewhere or they're in Africa and they're like, how am I going to balance all of these time changes and the time zones? Well, you are not the only one dealing with that. So it's all about figuring out and finding your group. And we really hope that you start doing that in orientation. So with that aside, and you will return to that in orientation because we are quite serious about it, I want to turn to talking about two tools or two resources that can really help you move forward towards your degree. First is credit for prior learning, and this is a collection of ways where you can earn college credit for what you already know. And there are three ways to do that. The first is credit by examination. So that includes things like CLEP, UXL, DSST, a variety of language exams. And sidebar, as you're going through orientation, you are actually completing 30% of the work that is associated with a Sailor exam. And afterward, you can pay $5 and get a college credit. So without even needing to, you are starting the process of getting credit for prior learning if you so choose. But beyond those exams, We also have pre-evaluated non-collegiate learning. So there may be a particular credential that you've gotten for work. And if we as an institution have already evaluated it, we can give you college credit for what you've learned outside of the college classroom. Lastly, we have a course, PLA 300, that's credit by portfolio evaluation. So when you look at your syllabi this coming semester, you'll see a lot of them have what's called learning outcomes or learning objectives. And if you know that you actually understand how to do all of those things, we can actually evaluate your learning by portfolio if you take PLA 300. The benefit of PLA 300 is it's also a college option course. So you can take it, earn credit for that, and then earn credit if your portfolio passes for a whole second course, all for the price of one. So if these are interesting to you, remember that we have a webinar coming up on Thursday where the true experts in this will be able to tell you even more. So I hope you will register for it if you haven't yet, attend if you can. But there's also that email address on the screen, and they would love to hear from you as well by email. The next thing I want to tell you about is zero textbook cost courses, because textbooks are expensive. I have not been out of school. Well, let me rephrase that. I've been out of school for a little bit of time from undergraduate. They were expensive when I was in school. They cost more now. And so we've been working on reducing that cost to you by using open educational resources or other free materials. That means that there is no textbook cost for you in a zero textbook cost course. You just pay the tuition. And as of last semester, we were really proud to see that 97% of our general education spring 24 sections were zero textbook cost. So at least if you've got some gen eds to fulfill, you've got a lot of options to fulfill them without buying a textbook. We also, though, have a couple of Z degrees. And what that means is you can actually, with careful planning, finish your entire undergraduate degree without paying for a textbook. So sadly, we are not there for all of our degrees because sometimes the textbooks are indeed needed. But for example, I can say liberal studies is one of those Z degrees. And off the top of my head, I believe communication and media, if you plan it correctly, can be another one. So if you want to find out more about zero textbook cost courses, there is a URL on the screen. And you can also go into CUNY First and the class search to locate more information. So it's a course attribute, and you can look for zero textbook cost course. It will show you all of the textbook cost courses that are available. There's also another option that's, I believe, called low textbook course, and I believe that's about $25. So there are a couple of different ways that you can navigate what the costs of courses are and which options are available to you. So with that, I want to pause with all of this slideshow, give you a bit of a tour, and then I'll make sure that we have time both for me to give you some final tips and at the end, ask some QA questions, or on my part, answer some QA questions. So I am actually going to start over here, and let me make sure you can see. Well, actually, can y'all give me a thumbs up if you are seeing the CUNY homepage? Beautiful. I love all the hands ups. Makes me so happy. Fantastic. So this is my favorite way to log into any of the different types of websites you need. So if you hover over login, you'll see a list. CUNY First is there, which is where you'll apply for or register for your courses. DegreeWorks is here on the bottom, which while we're not going to go into that now, is a great tool. We'll have information go out to you about closer to the middle of the semester because it helps you figure out what courses you need and what courses you don't need. But for now, I want to highlight Brightspace/Blackboard. So I have actually pre-clicked it and it will lead you to this page here. CUNY as a university is in a weird space right now where some campuses are still using Blackboard and some like us are using Brightspace. So you're going to want to click this button here to log into Brightspace. If by chance you are taking an e-permit course at another campus, you'll be able to see down here just the list of campuses rather that are using both. So you can see all of these here are using Brightspace right now. These are currently using Blackboard. Everyone will be in Brightspace by fall of 25. Either way, you're going to click log into Brightspace. And for me, I think I'm already logged in, so it's just going to take me to the home page. I'll click it to see just in case. But if you are not logged in, yes, I'm logged in. If you're not logged in, it will send you to the page where you need to put your @login.cuny.edu address in. So just like you would have when you were logging into CUNY First or Blackboard, same login, and it'll bring you to this home page. So this is where things start to look a little bit different. You'll be able to see your courses. Now, I can see inactive courses just because I'm not a student. You should expect to only see active courses. So for right now, that's just orientation. On the first day of term, your other courses will also appear here. So you'll be able to see them in squares just like that. So again, please don't panic if you log in and you only see orientation. That's completely normal. What you'll want to do is just click on the name of the site and congratulations, you are in your course site. Now, I am going to navigate everything as a learner because my view is a bit different than yours, but I want to give you a warning that even as a learner, my view is still probably going to be a little bit different than yours is. It'll be close enough so that you can follow it. So rather than announcements being on their own page like they are in Blackboard and you have a side menu on the left, instead, you've got announcements on this homepage, and then you've got your table of contents for the course. So this is where you would be seeing in a course week 1, week 2. You might see start here like you do here or more information. But all of those areas that would have been for weekly materials page, those are right here now. And so you can get started in most cases just by clicking on the name of the module. You can do a couple of other things. So if you want to learn a little bit more about it before you go in, you can just click that I and it will give you the beginning of the description of the module, right? If you just click that little arrow, it'll put you back where you were, and now you can go on inside. And so you've got that same blurb at the top, but now you'll be able to read the whole thing. And this page is where things might look a little bit more familiar from Blackboard, because you can see that you've got a side menu once more, and you've got a bunch of links here. So if you think back to course folders, this probably looks a bit similar. What's different is that you'll click into the first one. And so here I am looking at our orientation syllabus. But now, rather than needing to go back to the folder to navigate everything, you're just going to click these arrows. So I'm now on the second item on the folder, which is a video tour. I can click on the next arrow. Here's a welcome from our dean. And as I continue moving, you can learn more about me, but you can see I'm just moving through the entire folder. Now, some items will look a little bit different. So if you see something like this, you can actually just click these to learn more. And so you can see this is where you can learn more about all of our webinars. But once you've done that, the same process applies. I'm just clicking next, right? This is a quiz. So you can see I can click my way straight through to the quizzes. I get the same information. I get the instructions. And then if I were a student, I would have a start quiz or a click quiz to click in order to go ahead and do that. Now, if you find that you've gone a bit too far, you've got a couple of options, right? If you noticed, there's that button over here. When I clicked it, it showed me everything in the module. So if I don't want to go back and forth like this, I can go ahead and use it here. These check marks just show that I've moved through that. This shows that I haven't. And if I hover over it, I can see what it is. Task to attempt the quiz. The other option, if I want to, let's say, go back to the full table of contents, I can just click that link on the top. And here I am back in the table of contents for that first module. So I can continue doing that. I'm going to go into one more area just to show you something. I'm going to go into module 1. So remember, you've got a couple of different ways to do that. I went into the table of contents, and if I scroll down, module 1 is here, and I can just click into it. And if I do this, right, this looks familiar. Here I am clicking into the first one using the arrows. The other option is to go to course home. And here I'm right back on that first page you saw where I've got the modules, and I can click into module 1. And that'll also take me right there. So you've got lots of other opportunities. Oh, and you can also just click module 1 down here. So those are the different ways to access and navigate the materials that you would be learning. Remember that in orientation, we've opened almost everything up at the same time. In your courses, you might find that a module opens as you progress through the weeks. So week 1's module will be open, but weeks 4, that module may not open until week 4. So don't be surprised if that happens. I also want to show you how to navigate to other areas in the site. So you have discussions. Now I'm going to give you a warning. When I go here, I'm going to see a lot of discussion boards that you should not be seeing. Don't worry about that, right? But the discussion boards look different in Brightspace. So ask for help. All of our QA forums are here, and you can see who did the last post, how many posts there are, and how many threads. You just enter the forum by clicking on in here, and you can see the question, click more in order to read more, and you would click this to view the full thread, right? So you can see my comment there as well. And unlike Blackboard, where if you had a group discussion board, you had to go to a special place, here, your group discussion boards are indeed also listed on this page. So while I see the group discussion boards for every group, you should see one. All right, so if you're wondering where to go for those group discussion boards, that's where you go. And if you realize you don't want to see it right now, you can go ahead and just collapse it. You can also subscribe to a forum. I do not suggest subscribing to the forums in orientation because we have so many people, it'll fill your inbox, and nobody likes that. But in your courses, I would indeed suggest subscribing. I also want to highlight the grades area. So this is where you'll be able to go to see more information about grades, including if you've completed work. So if you're worried about that, you can go ahead and see it here. Don't panic if you're seeing 0 points and grades of Fs for things you have not completed. And that's why I wanted to make sure to show you this instead of at the Brightspace Basics webinar. What this is that until you complete an assignment, it is factoring in as 0 points. So do not worry about this until you have completed the assignment and you see that it has been graded. Just wanted to make sure you do not give yourself a bit of a heart attack there. because that is very different. Lastly, I want to show you where to go in order to see a couple of other things. So while I assume that you all can see why it would be helpful to go through all of the information for your assignments in order using those modules, if you're worried you missed something, go to activities, click on assignments, and that page will actually give you a link. So I haven't done this yet, which is why I have no score, and it will tell me it is not submitted. You can also access groups by going to tools and groups, as well as that announcements page as well. So that's enough for now, because I want to make sure we have enough time for the rest of the webinar. I will go into all of this and more in the Brightspace Basics webinar. So if this tour is making you realize, this really is a bit different, please do feel free to join me there. But what I will say before I end is just my suggestion to you on how to get started. Really is to just come to Course Home, look at this announcement. I also sent this to you as an email. You can see more about me, just the little brief blurb down here. You can see a little bit about work to do, and you'll notice that the due date for everything is the last day of orientation. But we do suggest that you try to move through Module 0 and Module 1 during the next week, if possible. So to get started, just head into Module 0, get started here, and you'll be able to view that syllabus, the tour, learn a whole bunch about me, get the links for the webinars, and please do fill out this orientation start questionnaire, because this will let us know a couple of things. One, if you are a first-generation student, there are resources that are available to you, and we want to make sure we know to send those to you when they become available. Two, we want to know if you are interested in synchronous opportunities like this webinar, and if so, what time works for you. And three, we want to know if there's anything else that really could be useful for us to know as we are crafting additional resources to put in orientation. This will be your opportunity to tell us that info, and we'll know you are the one who told us. Because at the end of the orientation, when we have that survey, we won't know who said what. So if you, for example, realize at the end of this orientation that you would really like to know more about tutoring, if you put it in the survey, I won't know who to reach out to. If you put it in the questionnaire, however, I can get in touch with you. So just get started by going in here, and remember that once you hit the end of a unit, you can just click the arrow and you start in the next one. So it all works out nice and easy. Or you can go to Course Home and move on to the next one there. So let me stop with this tour. I'm going to return to our slideshow just to give you some final tips, and then we'll spend the rest of the time on Q&A session questions. So I do suggest, if you have the ability to print out the syllabus, that you do so, because that syllabus has a lot of information about what you can find where, what the assignments are, and things of that nature. And maybe it's my age showing, but I also just have an easier time annotating things. So for example, if you are not in the East Coast of the US, you're going to want to annotate for your syllabi when things are actually due your time. And I just have an easier time on paper. Refer to the task list. So you saw that list on the bottom of the Course Home. You can look there and make sure there's nothing missing. You can also subscribe to your threads when possible. So for example, in the QA forum, if you ask a question and want to know when someone has responded to it, you can actually go ahead and subscribe to that thread. And remember, you can move ahead in orientation. So the only thing that is not currently available is the feedback survey, because we want to give you a week to navigate orientation before you give us feedback on it. Everything else is available. And beyond that, I'll just be adding materials depending on what you all say you need. So go ahead and move ahead if you'd like. And key, please do ask your questions. So you can ask your questions on the QA forums. You can send me an email at orientation@sps.cuny.edu. But if you have a question, please ask it, because you are never going to be the only person with that question. Even if you're the first person in this orientation session, I've been doing these since 2014. It will be rare that you are the only one, so don't feel any sort of way. I would much rather you ask. And if you don't see orientation, first question is, are you registered for your fall 24 courses? And if so, have you been registered for more than a day or two? Because it takes about 1 to 2 days for you to go from registering for your courses to being in orientation. As soon as I get you on my list of orientation students, you will get an email from me letting you know how to log in. So if you haven't gotten that email, it means you're not on the list for me yet. If it's been more than a couple of days since you registered and you're wondering why you didn't get an email from me, that's a good question to ask. So please do reach out. And lastly, make sure you're accessing Brightspace through CUNY.edu. So muscle memory, you might find yourself in Blackboard. Lord knows I have found myself in Blackboard. But you actually do need to be in Brightspace now for orientation. So with that, let's turn to these QA questions. I'm going to answer how many or as many as I can. And if I'm unable to answer one or you ask one and I just don't have time, I am going to be able to look at the questions that were answered or asked, and I'll try to reach back to anyone who is not anonymous. So, I see questions about courses and work. Will all your courses and work be posted on Brightspace? As long as you are in an online asynchronous course, the answer to that is yes. So all of your gen ed courses will be there. I believe the main exception at the undergraduate level is potentially youth studies. So youth studies courses you'll want to check, and you can also check that in CUNY First, because you can select what kind of course modality you want. So for example, I want online asynchronous, and it'll pull up that course. If you have a question about a youth studies course, you can reach out to me and I will check that for you. Next question was, where will you see your syllabus? So I'm going to go right back into the home page. The syllabus is in that first module 0, getting started, and it is the very first item. So just go ahead and click this. The syllabus will appear in this window, but remember, you can also just download it by clicking here. And so that'll help you there. Next question. Will you have a mentor during your entire program? So we have the peer mentors in orientation just during orientation, but I can give you a little sneak peek that we are working on a mentorship program. So you will receive more information about that soon. The goal of which will be to connect you not just to a peer mentor, but also to an alumni mentor. So someone who has graduated, is in the work world, and can help you think about how what you do with us can connect to what comes later. So more information about that will be sent to you shortly. We are in the process of building that out because this will be the very first term we have this particular mentorship program. If you are able to come to the last webinar and orientation, however, we will be able to tell you about some other resources. So I see a question about someone who has I'll just say a trip in September and is wondering if there's flexibility in homework deadlines due to the asynchronous nature of your courses. So what you'll find in your courses is that there will be often an end of the week deadline. So let's say a course week runs Monday through Sunday. You will have a Sunday deadline to submit work. Some courses will also have a midweek deadline, like on a Thursday. So if you know you're going to be out or away from a computer for a certain period of time, I would definitely suggest reaching out to your professor as soon as possible, because a couple of things are possible. One is that you may be able to get an extension, and another is that you may be able to be given access to the work in advance. So those are both possibilities, but ultimately it will be up to your professor. So do reach out to them, please. Another question. So I'm looking for ones that are repeated first. So one is about if it's okay if your Brightspace does not show information for your semester courses. And I do believe that there was another question about when those will appear. So your courses for the fall term will appear on day one of the fall term, usually sometime between 6 and 8 a.m. So it is completely normal for you not to see your courses for the fall term at this point. You're going to want to log in for the first day of the term, and that is when you will find them. And if you don't on the first day of term, you just reach out to me and I'll look into why. Next question related to that. What if you don't even see orientation on the landing page for classes? So if you registered more than or earlier than, let's say, last Wednesday, and you are not seeing it, send me an email. If you have your EMPL, that's that 8-digit ID number, include your EMPL, because I will be able to look into what's going on. It might just be that there's a slight delay. You might not need to take orientation if you've been here a year ago and just took a brief break. So do send me an email if that is the case. So questions about how many hours to invest for Brightspace 15? How many hours for your courses? Are there assignments? I'm going to try to answer as many of those at once as possible. So orientation is modeled after your courses during the 15-week term. And during the 15-week term, you want to try to have 9 to 12 hours per week per course. So we say be prepared to maybe need 9 hours for your orientation during a week, but a lot of that depends on how comfortable you are with navigating the online site, how comfortable you are with posting on the discussion board, things of that nature. So you may find it takes you less time. You may also find that it takes you more. But we tend to say just keep in mind that 9 to 12 hour guideline for the 12-week sessions. And if you're taking a 7-week session, you want to double it. So you want to have about 18 hours a week for a 7-week session. See a question about my email, and I'll just put that on the screen. So that is the email where you can reach out to me. I know some of you may find that I do indeed have a personal email, and I'm going to actually ask that you send me an email at this orientation@sps.cuny.edu address instead. I have everything that goes here forwarded to my personal email, and I prioritize answering things here during orientation. So you'll actually get a faster response this way. In terms of selecting courses, if you haven't yet registered for your courses, that is something you're going to want to reach out to your advisor for. And if you're having trouble getting in touch, you can indeed email me and I will help facilitate. How do I know which credits were transferred and how many I need to graduate? So a lot of that is something that at this point as a new student, you are probably going to want to reach out to your advisor about. After your first term or in the middle of your first term, that's what degree works can help you for. And so midterm, mid-fall, keep an eye out for an email from me about more on how to use degree work so that you can register for future semesters with all of that information in line or in mind, excuse me. Questions about learner Chromebooks and hotspots, things of that nature. So what I want to make sure I emphasize here is that these are loans for emergencies. So these are not a situation where you realize now, like you actually want to use a computer and not a mobile device. The loaner laptops are time bound. I do not believe they are full semester, although the experts in this will be able to tell you more about that in that last webinar we offer about tools and resources. I'm not certain about loaner hotspots, so I'm going to make a note to get more information about that and get back to you about that question. There are questions about, does attending SPS help students receive more remote-based jobs? So we have a career services office, which means that if you reach out to them, and they are indeed an orientation, so if you post interest in that there, I can point them at you. But if you work with them, they can indeed help you there. And I would imagine if you really think about how to position your experience as an online learner and an online collaborator, that could go a long way as well when you're talking about how you could collaborate in the workplace without all being physically in the same place. There are indeed assignments during this orientation. There are not that many, but there are some. And so the easiest way to see them is to look at the syllabus, because you'll be able to see everything you'll need to do. And you can see that most of the things listed under activities and assignments are nice and easy, like download the syllabus or register for the orientation webinars. There are some that are actual things to do, such as the academic integrity quiz. And for a lot of those, remember, you can go to course home and look at this work to do item here. So this will also give you information, but as you move through the modules, so I'm going to go into a different space just to show you, you will automatically find yourself hitting some of these activities. So for example, one of the activities is the academic integrity quiz. And as you are learning about taking quizzes and exams in Brightspace, there's information about how to do so. The next two areas are information about academic honesty. So this is one of those taken from that Sailor exam. There is then one that is SPS specific. And the very next item is the quiz. So as long as you move through the items in the modules, you will find yourself hitting the activities, and we hope that they move fairly smoothly for you in that way. I'm not quite sure, so I'm going to say the name of the person who asked this question just so that you can email me. Olga, you had a question about the difference between regular academic weekly courses, and I'm not sure if you mean between that and orientation. And then you had another question about determining questions about your general education courses. Just so happens that my non-first year hat is that I'm the academic director of general education. So please send me an email because I can definitely answer that question for you. And I mean, honestly, if any of the rest of you have questions about gen ed, you can send me an email too, and I'll be glad to be helpful. So how much do your grades for the orientation quizzes and assignments matter? we mark you for completion. So your grades here do not carry into your GPA in any way. I do not want you to worry if, for example, you take this academic integrity quiz that's on the screen and you find that you missed something. Do not worry about it, please. What you should instead make sure you focus on is just making sure you understand the questions you got wrong, but the score itself, not something to worry about. Instead, what matters is that you finish orientation, and that is the case for all of the assignments in orientation. As long as you actually attempt the assignment, so for example, there's a practice assignment, as long as you're not doing something like attaching a random Word document and you are doing a good faith effort on the assignment, that is all we ask for. If you do not finish orientation, that does get added to your record in CUNY first. So it will not impact your GPA, but it is added to your record, and that is why we can mark it pass-fail. Next up, in terms of how to acquire your textbooks in advance, and I'm worried I am going to have some questions left, so I do apologize. So someone has asked, how do you find out about your textbooks and what textbooks are required? You've got a couple of options. You can go to the bookstore to look for that, but that information is also sometimes listed in CUNY first. So either of those are possible. And I will make sure that we highlight that bookstore for you in orientation. But do feel free to email me or just ask on the QA, because that's one of those questions that I'm sure lots of people will be glad to know the answer to. So the question about how many credits do you get for completing this orientation? If you finish this orientation and then you go and you take that Sailor exam for $5, you get a credit. So you get 1 college credit for $5, which is significantly less than a college credit usually costs. So that's the thing that I'm very happy about there. Science courses with labs, how does that work? So some science courses, I'm going to be speaking about Gen Ed in particular. This is not an orientation question, but I can answer it quickly. Some of them will have labs that you have to do in your home, and some have labs that you do remotely. I also see a question about the school library. We do indeed. We collaborate with the Newman Library with Baruch. And so you've got full services at Baruch. But if you get a school ID with a picture on it, you can go to any CUNY library with your ID card and study there, take out books there. That is a huge benefit to getting your ID with the photo on it. Other things. Transcript evaluation, the amount of time that takes depends on if you have courses that have already been evaluated or if they need to be evaluated right now. So that time period varies, but we do our best to get those back to you as soon as possible. And someone also asked if modules will be added. It is just the 4, but what will happen is if I go back to course home, you will see that the final module in orientation, once this loads, final tips and resources. And while there are already resources added here, more will be added as time goes on. So here is that resources for CUNY SPS students that already exists, and you can learn all about all of these things. But more will be added and updated as time passes. So that is where more information will appear. I see we're out of time, so I'm going to try to answer just one last question. I see a bunch about how to get an ID card. So what I'm actually going to do is I am going to post an announcement after this with full information about that. That way you can find more information about your ID cards, and think that's the biggie that I haven't answered yet. One last question and then I'll stop. How long will the orientation modules be uploaded? Will it be until the end of the fall semester or the completion of the degree? So while we will close the sample assignments at the end of orientation, so the actual things you need to do to earn your completion and get that P on your record for passing orientation, we will leave the resources open throughout your first semester. So you won't, for example, be able to complete the practice assignment, but you will be able to come into a module and say, you know what, I forget how to take a quiz. Can I look at that again? The answer will be yes. So I know there are more questions since I love how they kept coming in, and I apologize that I did not get to all of them. I'm going to get to as many as I can afterward, but please, if you have a burning question that I didn't get to, just email me. I will get back to you within 24 hours if at all possible. And if you don't get a response from me within 36, please just send a follow-up. I do not get my feelings hurt from a follow-up email. I actually love them. So I just want to say thank you all for joining us during this webinar. I hope it was useful, and I really do look forward to seeing you in the site and beyond, because in however long it takes you, that could be 1 year, it could be 4, it could be more. I look forward to seeing you graduate. So I'm already thinking about that for you all. So thank you for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of your evening. Take great care of yourself, and I'll see you soon.